Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now today what I wanted to talk to you all about is actually the film versus digital debate. And I'm not interested in necessarily saying that, I don't want to get into the politics of it, if you will. But I personally have to say, I do think that film and digital both has its merits as far as stylistic reasons and such. But recently, I actually decided to experiment a little bit with some film emulation in DaVinci Resolve. And woohoo, let me tell you, I think it looks really good. And so I don't know how well it's going to come out on YouTube. I am going to have the grain, be a larger size than the default settings that DaVinci has for, say, 16 millimeter, which is what I'm using in this image right now. And hopefully you'll be able to see it. If not, I'll kind of zoom in, like maybe I'll zoom into my hand here for a second and you can kind of maybe see that grain structure better moving around. But I think it's interesting. Playing around with the colors a little bit and stuff to kind of give a more, I guess you could say, natural look. I played with doing a simulation of what's called hyalation, which I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is like this like glowing kind of thing around like bright highlights, so like bright lights in the background, that kind of stuff. And that particularly, I really think looks good for certain things. Like maybe like combined with the grain for like a horror film would be interesting. Like, because from what I understand, a lot of horror films that was lower budget was going to shoot 16 millimeter film. For those that didn't know, as far as I've been able to determine, has always been cheaper than 35 mil 35 mil film, stock. And so, you know, that would make us lower budget filmmakers back in the day have a chance at making the movie that maybe we wouldn't have been able to on a 35 mil. I think that if it had been decades ago and I was making a movie, I'd probably not be able to afford 35 mil film. And I would say that's probably likely. And so I'd probably be shooting in 60 millimeter. And you know, for a horror film, I almost kind of feel like that might, I'm not really a huge fan of horror, but I think it might actually be kind of the right aesthetic because like that graininess and this kind of, I don't know, there's just something about film and 60 millimeter film that I kind of feel like works for horror films. 35 mil film looks a lot cleaner. And I do prefer like 35 mil, like sensors on like camera. So this is a Super 35 sensor designed to be about the same size as a 35 millimeter film strip. I say about, I don't think it's exactly the same from what I recall, but it's close enough. For the look you're seeing now, this was a shot of me from one of my older videos, and I did some film simulation on this. And I personally think, just an opinion, of course, but I personally think that the way I adjusted the colors really kind of helped it make it filmic, along with the grain structure that was obviously added in the computer because this was shot digitally. And so I think that really helped. I also kind of a tiny bit de-sharpened the image as part of this process. And I think the de-sharpening really helped too, because, you know, film is kind of this, it's detailed, but also can be kind of soft sometimes, depending on what lens you use and all that. And I don't claim to know what I'm talking about here other than what I've read online and stuff. And I think I understand what I'm talking about, but I'm sure the people that have shot on film 100 times over are going to get in the comments and say, no, that's not how it works. And please do. I would like to hear your perspective. But I plan on continuing to shoot digitally. This is being shot digitally. It's just, for my workflow, so much more feasible right now. And I'm not saying I would never shoot something on actual film, but I think probably what I would do is I just shoot it on digital, at least right now, if I want it to feel like it's film, and then just do that. And I know I said much for horror films, but I will just give you a quick teaser here. I do have a kind of mystery, suspenseful, I don't know, some of you might call it a horror film kind of thing that I'm working on, short film. And I think you'll find it interesting. You know, again, it might freak you out a little bit, might scare you a little bit, but I think it's going to be interesting. And I really think that like a 35 mil digital, Super 35 mil digital look just probably isn't right for that. So I think what I'm going to do is probably add like 16 millimeter grain structure to it. Hopefully YouTube will translate that if I make it big enough, and I want to kind of adjust the colors a little bit to kind of, I guess you could say, lean in to something that would look like it was shot on a film stock, like an older Kodak film stock, for example. So anyway, it's just a quick video. Let me know your thoughts about film versus digital in the comments. Do you think that we should still shoot everything on film? I'm sure somebody watching this video thinks that. And hey, I mean, you know, I have to say, stuff shot on film does look good. So, you know, there is that. But I also think stuff shot on digital looks good. I like movies. So, you know, their photography method, as far as I'm concerned, isn't automatically the only thing that matters. In fact, actually, I would argue that if it's a good movie, it shouldn't really matter that much at all, right? If it's a good story and I get into it and I enjoy the story, that's what really matters. Anyway, folks, just let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Goodbye, everybody.
And action.